Hello!
Hi, friends.
Hello, I'm Jen, as many of you probably know that are on this channel. This is one of my very best friends, Grace Gilroy, and she is a nurse practitioner, certified nurse midwife. And she's going to answer some questions that this community has had about holistic birth, about your pregnancy. So if you're pregnant or desiring to be pregnant or know someone who's pregnant and you have a question, you can drop it here. But I have a lot of questions for Grace, so I'm just going to start. So Grace, why did you become a midwife?
Okay. Well, it started in high school.
Because neither one of us have children yet. And we're really passionate about birth and women's health. And so over the decade that we've been doing this, we have a very non-biased, as I talked about in the holistic pregnancy webinar, when you don't have a birth of your own, right, you can come in as a non-biased, educated, empowered women's advocate.
Non-biased entity.
All right. Why did you become a midwife?
In high school, my best friend, when we were 15, got pregnant. At 15.
Oh, I didn't know this.
Yeah.
I actually don't know the answer to this question.
So my best friend, Morgan, she got pregnant when we were 15 and had her daughter when we were 16. And me being an only child, I didn't know anything about the pregnancy world, babies, how any of that worked. And so that was kind of a culture shock for me. And I was kind of her surrogate partner because the baby daddy was not in the picture. And so we would make a day of it. After school, I'd drive her to her ROB appointments, her return OB appointments, and sit with her and go through all of that with her. And then I was kind of okay, this birth stuff, it's kind of cool. All right, it's kind of weird. I like it. And I was actually with her when I went to one of her appointments. And at the time, none of it made sense, but now it makes sense. She had elevated blood pressures and protein in her urine.
At 16 or
Yep.
15?
Yep, well, 16, yeah. And so then she was like, you have to go to the hospital right now for an induction. And, we're 16. So we're like, oh, we get to have a baby today. Totally pre-eclampsia. What's
You
that?
were there for the whole thing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, not for the actual birth, but I did take off school and I sat, because she had one of those 3-day inductions, she was probably closed, thick and high, 16, G1, all the things. She had Cytotec for a day and then, they did Pitocin and all the things.
You see that pretty common now?
I feel well, it depends on what setting you're in, but hospital settings are more notorious for inductions. And so, yeah, some of those inductions do end up being a little lengthy. But yeah, so then I got to see that process and see her beautiful daughter, who's now 12, I think, and makes me feel ancient. But yeah, and so then I was like, okay, I want to explore this. And so I thought I wanted to be an OBGYN. So they had this program at our local hospital where you got to sign up to follow an OBGYN. Mm-hmm. And I got there and they're like, we don't have an OB today, but we have a midwife you can follow. And I was like, what is that? Is that a witch? Where the next best thing? What is a midwife? And so I got to follow her, got to see her catch a baby. And that was, I think, my first real live birth that I saw. And I was like, I want to do that. That's what I want to do. And I was like, I want to be a midwife because it was less school and I learned more about them and just how they have a more holistic perspective. They look at the whole person and they're just more client-centered. Not that, there's not OBs that are like that, because there's a lot of great OBs out there, but midwives are just kind of fostered from the beginning to be more.
So what delineates the OB and the midwife? And if a woman who's I want maybe some medical interventions, maybe not the whole gamut, what benefits would going to a midwife have for them versus an OB?
Okay. I feel like midwives are a little bit more patient sometimes, and they're willing to give you a little more time.
I've seen this to be true.
A little more time to give your body, the time to do what it's designed to do. They're also more into informed decision-making and informed consent, shared decision-making. That's what I'm really big on. I'm never doing anything to anyone. We're talking about it. We're making decisions together. I'm just there to educate, and then we make the best choice for that client. And there's no real right or wrong decision. It's what you intuitively feel is right. So as far as OB versus midwife goes, I just feel like midwives have more time to, go through all of that with you.
And for those who just jumped on, I see a lot of women who I know are pregnant right now. This is Grace Gilroy.
Guys.
I follow her. You can find her account, and she's a certified nurse midwife. basically a nurse practitioner that is like specializing in birth. She's incredible. So continue on.
Let's see, where were we at? What were we talking about?
About like
my brain.
The delineation, but I'm curious of what as a midwife do you want for your mamas that you feel like they would have more of a challenge receiving with an OB, and if someone is with an OB, how can they have that midwifery experience with advocacy, with education, with a doula, all of those things?
Yes.
Like how could they have the more patience and the more time and the more informed decision making?
Yep. So even if you're doing a hospital birth, even if you have an OB, my biggest suggestion is get a doula, because that's going to be your middleman. They're going to be your best advocate. They're going to be there to safeguard your decisions and your choices. They're going to be there to add that extra education piece where you might not get that since you don't have a midwife involved. And so, someone to protect your birth space going into the hospital system, having that advocate, that's really important. And you can still have a great hospital birth and OB experience and all of that, but just having people there for you to protect that space for you, and just, going in with a loose plan. Don't get too caught up on a tight birth plan, because birth is unpredictable and, things happen.
I'm going to throw you a curveball question, because Grace works in a birth center. And what would be for you if you delivered, if you did home birth and hospital births, what would be the pros and cons of each setting?
If I did home birth and hospital birth.
Yeah.
Okay.
What would you want and not want for both?
Okay. Well, home birth, obviously you're home, you're comfy, you're in your most organic, safe space. You have the freedom to do what you want, move as you want. You could do a water birth. You can give birth in your yard, in the backwoods, whatever you want to do. You have that freedom.
Do you know anyone who's done that? That'd actually be really cool.
Not an outside birth.
Outside.
I used to watch this show on Lifetime called Birthing in the Wild.
Emma, if you're still on here, I saw her pop on. That's your thing. She's literally, I think, an ever baby on the earth.
Oh, yeah. And it was these women who would just have their
She's
babies
41
outside.
and 4.
I read Emma's post today, and I was like, you go, girl. 41 and 4. Yep.
Which we're going to have to come back to being past your due date.
That's another thing.
Carry on.
As well. I feel like we could talk about all kinds of things. Okay, yes. So home birth, you kind of just you're more in your own space. You have more autonomy over what's happening in that environment. So I love that. And it's just more homey. You can have as many people as you want. You can do things as you wish, as you will. But, there's benefits to being in a hospital. You've got, tons of staff. You've got a pretty button you can press on the wall if you need assistance. You've got an OR down the hallway if you need it. You've got, all those resources there, which is nice. And you have, I've met women who are like, I just want to give a hospital birth, or I want to have a hospital birth because I want to just chill after birth for a couple days, and I want someone to be there to take care of me and my baby, and I don't want to immediately be at home having to step into that mom space. So some people, for them, a hospital birth is kind of like a little, not a vacation, I don't want to say, but you get that extra support afterwards, where you have those nurses checking on you around the clock, and if you wanted them to take baby, they could.
You have free postpartum doulas in a way.
That's true. You just have, you get those couple of days to kind of reintegrate, and they have lactation on staff, and nurses are usually pretty well versed in that. So, there's pros and cons to any environment. A birth center, that's where I work at, is kind of your happy medium. It's like home birth meets hospital birth. So we kind of ride the line of Western with holistic, kind of meshing it together, which is what I love, because I think to be successful, we have to have the cohesive blend of Western and holistic, more functional medicine, because we've seen that Western can be at full force, has its faults, but also functional can be that way too. So if we blend it together, then I think that's where we get optimal health and success.
And besides an OR, we share stories. I mostly listen to Grace's stories now and relive my old birth work days, but she was talking about an infant that required neonatal resuscitation, which is they had to, help the baby breathe after birth, and they have all the equipment to do so at the birth center.
We do.
And you can have a water birth there.
You can. Yep. We are the only place, this birth center that I work at, New Birth Company in Kansas City, we are the only place in the city that you can have a water birth unless you're doing it at home, unless you're doing a home birth, because none of the hospitals in the city allow that. They'll let you labor in the water, but they make you get out to push baby. So it's kind of interesting.
Can we talk on the post due date? So I don't want to call anyone out. It was in a pretty large Facebook group, but there was someone talking about, so we have Emma on here who's rocking 41 and 4, and I talked to her this morning, and she was like, her midwife, and you have to remind me, like, your comfortability in your midwives, but it was longer. It was past 42 by a couple of days, which I thought was like really supportive of your timeline. And then it was in a large Facebook group. I saw a post and I sent this to Emma. I was like, I feel like this is confirmation for trust in your body. That there was I think it was like a younger gal who was talking about her doctor has cleared her to be induced at 37. And there was a lot of NICU nurses getting on there saying like, wow, hey, your baby still has a month of development. So like, what's the deal with post, like when you go over your due date, like your post-term and then we can talk about the 37 week.
So I think every like setting probably has their own guidelines. I know like home birth midwives will let you go, I think, to like 42 and 6.
Yeah, I think that's what she told me.
I think is, the latest they would probably want you to go. Our birth center, we let you go to 42 and 1 and then we have to transfer out for a hospital setting. But I know a lot of hospital practices, there's a lot of people who are still doing the induction at 39, elective, 39 week induction or 40 week inductions. I know a specific OB who's like, oh, I don't let my patients go past 39 weeks. He's like, I just don't do that. And, wow, sometimes when we have to transfer our clients and I'm like, oh, this client's 41 and 5. And they're like, like the hospital staff is like, oh my God. And they're like freaking out. So some,
what do you think it is with that OB that doesn't let them go past 39? And so if you're delivering with an OB, you probably have a great experience. Ask these questions.
Yeah. I give OBs a lot of credit. They see a lot of, they kind of see the worst of the worst as well, because they are OBs and they're in that space. So I think, they have seen more negative outcomes of, babies and post dates and things like that. So I think that, sometimes we all know there's a lot of fear around birth and there's a lot of fear
in medicine
and
anything to do with medicine in general.
So I think a lot of it is, fear-based as well as, every provider, as hopefully every provider has your safety like at the forefront. And I think, provider OBs come from a good space. They've just, they've seen some things and they just, have made a generalization of like the safest way is for everyone to just, have a baby by 39 weeks or
get
something
that baby
like out. So I'm not going to fault, where they're coming from their past experiences and what they've been taught, but it's just interesting because I feel like we all have different
If you have
views.
A mom at 41 weeks and you're delivering her, like, do you have any concern? Like, what is your thought process? Like, oh, her baby wanted to cook longer, her body needed more time. Like, what is the midwife's perspective?
Everyone is so individualized and no woman's going to fit in the same box. And there's women who are like, I always carry my babies to 42 weeks. That's just what I do. Doesn't matter how many I have. Like, it's just the way that it is. So I think sometimes our bodies are just on some type of, we're cyclical beings.
Kind of like our period. Like some women, right? I'm guessing here. I'm asking the midwife, but some women have like a 32-day cycle or 35, and they always do that, and they didn't have fertility issues, and they, all of our hormones could be improved, but in my perspective, but they, for the most part, hormonally are well. Is that like kind of the same thing with birth?
Yep. And that due date is an estimate, and that's what we forget. That due date is an estimate. That due date is technically like 2 weeks either, this way or that way. But is where that due date lives.
And could that be off by a couple of days with conception? Like, even if they know when they had sex, could it be like they didn't ovulate, like the sperm stayed? I'm just thinking of like physiology, like the sperm was there, can live up to 5 days, and then they release the egg. Like, even if you had sex on a Tuesday, like maybe you didn't get pregnant till Friday.
That's correct. Yeah.
Is that possible?
That is possible.
I just thought of that.
Yep. No, that's the thing.
I feel smart.
That's why it is an estimated due date. People forget the estimated part, and they get really hung up on that date. And even like, I have moms that will just really like, they just didn't even think they'd make it to their due date, and so then they're like 41 weeks and they're just like so mind blown by it.
They're just done. So how do you coach moms who you're like, you want to give, because do you want to keep baby in there if they're at 39 and 40 and 5?
Yeah, I mean, we have certain parameters that we have to follow because we're CABC, we're under a credentialing body for a birth center, so we do have certain like things that we have to follow, but we really don't get riled up until like 41 and 4, 41 and 5, and then that's when we're kind of like, okay, we should probably be doing some things to get some things rolling.
So
just
what do you
because.
do? What do you have moms do?
So it all depends on what they want to do, and how their cervix is feeling. If their cervix is favorable or not kind of helps us decide like what method we're going to use. So if they're at least 1 centimeter and I can get my finger in there to do a good membrane sweep, that's kind of your least invasive like first option as like an induction method.
What does a membrane sweep do for those who are like, what is that?
So it's kind of like a 50-50 whether it's gonna work or not. It works better in multips, so moms who have had babies before. So essentially, like, this is your cervix here, and I put my finger through the cervix, so that has to be at least 1 centimeter so I can get my finger through there, and I'm pretty much going like this, disrupting that lining from like the amniotic sac and the uterine lining, and essentially I'm releasing prostaglandins into your body doing this.
I love when Grace talks.
I'm like messing things up.
My favorite.
I'm releasing prostaglandins, and your brain will sense that, and it's like, oh, cervical change is happening down there. So my brain, I should make oxytocin and make some contractions because, like, we've got cervical change. Let's do contractions and get this kid, born. So we're kind of tricking your body a little bit, like giving it a little jump start. If your body's not ready, like, it's not going to work. But that is an option, and that's kind of like your least.
So you see it work like half of the time.
It works more in people who've had babies before. Okay. And if you're like, and it depends on how favorable the cervix was, like if it's, not in the back 40, if it's like nice and, bam, because sometimes cervixes like to hide. And if, you're a little thinned out and, a little dilated, kind of got that, I don't know, it's weird. I like in my head, I'll be like, oh, that's a really, really good cervix. It felt like a labory cervix.
Only a midwife.
But like, people wouldn't understand that, but yeah, and I'll be like, oh yeah, that's a labory cervix. She might go off that sweep. But then some people don't. And that's just the way it is.
The moms to be, they are wondering, like, they're going to get a cervical check. Like, what is that like for them? So the midwife or the OB, it's with their hand, a gloved hand, and like, what can they anticipate they would experience?
Okay, good question.
Oh, Hannah said the membrane sweep worked for her.
Yeah.
How was that?
It does. Yeah. So a cervical exam, never usually, it's not a super fun thing. It's kind of like getting a speculum exam or a PAP, not something you super look forward to. Some women are totally fine. They aren't bothered by a cervical check. Other women, might find it more painful. I think it's just so individualized depending on past, trauma, history, all those kinds of things.
Are cervical checks required? Oh, Amazon's here. Do you want to be in our live?
We're getting an Amazon delivery.
I'm sorry, what?
Do you want to say hi on the camera? He brought us our package.
Hello.
Oh, they can't see you.
Oh my gosh.
Come on in here.
Hi.
Thank you.
No problem, guys. Have a great evening.
I don't remember what I ordered. Or wait, is it from you or Jeff? It's for Jeff. Anyways, carrying on.
What are cervical checks required?
Yeah.
So in a hospital setting, they would probably be wanting to do them on some type of routine-ish schedule, because they get, once you enter the hospital system, you're kind of on their time. So they're trying to facilitate things.
They do some, if you don't have a strong advocacy in knowing for what you want, I think it's easy to have a beautiful experience in a hospital, and it's easy to get swept up in their timeline.
Yeah. That's why I'm like, have your good support team there to protect your space. Because I know like some people, I worked at a hospital where we checked people like every 2 to 4 hours around the clock. It was ridiculous. But then there's other people who are like, yeah, we haven't checked her for 12 hours. Like, it's really kind of, I think it's provider dependent.
What if a mom wants to be checked that often? What do you, in your opinion, say to that? Because I know moms I would be like, am I doing it? Is it there?
Yeah.
That would be
so,
me.
As long as she's not ruptured, like if she wants to be checked, sure. If the bag of waters is ruptured, then I like to limit checks because you can just, increase your infection risk if I'm, sticking my fingers in there a lot. So then I'm really like conservative with my checks. At the birth center that I work at, we require that we check you upon admission just so we know like where we're starting from and to make sure we're like in active labor and we've got.
Because you won't admit until
active.
Yes. What is that? Active labor. Like when do moms get like past the baton and you're in labor now?
So we really do it as long as they have a good, strong contraction pattern. That's what's important to us.
What is that pattern?
I've contraction and pattern of like every 3 to 5 minutes or, 4 to 6 minutes. It's really the strength and consistency that we look for. And we also look and see how mom is coping. If she's like really struggling, then we'll admit her sooner just so she can have that support, get in the tub, do those things. I've admitted people at like 3 centimeters before just because, they needed support, they needed help, or they were like super thin and baby was low and I was like, it's going to be fine.
Or like they're a second time mom.
Yeah. So we, that's what's, labor and birth is kind of a big like gray area. Like everything is like patient dependent, I feel like.
That's why I like it. It's like more of an art than a science, right?
It is, because not everything is going to work for, the same mom.
Just as we talked about in the Holistic Pregnancy webinar on Tuesday, which you can still catch the replay, inspirehealthbyjen.com. We talked about as a mom being connected to your intuition, but your provider, and this gal, that's why she's one of my very best friends, I want to talk about the tub here in a second, but how does your intuition work in your work as a nurse midwife, delivering babies, helping moms, where it's totally great? Like every day. Like you went to school and you learned, here's what can happen, sometimes happen and typically happens, and here's our regulations, but now it's like, this isn't cardiac, where it's just, this is how we do it.
That's probably my favorite part about birth, because like, I've only been catching babies like on my own for like a year and a half now, and it's like, just when I'm like, okay, I think I've like not seen it all, but like I've seen, some stuff, and then like something will happen and I'm like, I just, it's so unpredictable, and that's just what I love about it, is there's just always,
what was
something new going down.
In the last 2 weeks, or in the last 2 months, we won't put a too constricting of a time limit, what was the most surprising birth or even like challenging birth that you had? Like what was the scenario?
Well, last week I did have, we had like a classic, which was so funny. Me and my nurse were just like, I don't know. I think I jinxed myself a little bit, because in my head I was like, man, I haven't had any kind of like, I don't know what word I want to use. Any kind of like, unfavorable situation in a while. And then I had a birth, and we had like we had a shoulder dystocia and then a postpartum hemorrhage, of course, right afterwards.
What's a shoulder dystocia?
Shoulder dystocia. And that is when baby's shoulder gets, I'll do it layman's terms. Baby's shoulder gets like hooked on mom's pubic bone essentially. And like, so head delivers and you kind of see it turtle. Like you don't see baby like doing its basic maneuvers, to like restitute and come out. Cause that like top shoulder is kind of hooked under mom's pubic bone. So then you gotta do some maneuvering. Usually, I try to do just different position changes. We have like a set thing that we do, but usually you're just trying to change the trajectory of the pelvis to get that shoulder to slip under that pubic bone, which we did. It was great. But then, we had a hemorrhage after that, of course, so it was like,
and what you do for that?
We gave all the meds, at our birth center. We have all the same meds that they would have in a hospital setting. So they
even have Pitocin.
We did.
You can inject it.
Yeah, we did Pitocin, we did Cytotec, we did Methergin, we did TXA.
Did it stop it?
Yes, finally, after the TXA.
What? Okay, if we were to swim upstream with postpartum hemorrhage, what can moms be doing for their health and their body to improve postpartum hemorrhage? Chances of.
You want to make sure you got a nice beefy hemoglobin, no pun intended, and and have good
plant-based moms. You can also take blood builder minis. It's in my supplement store, or just look them up.
Yep.
And do you still do alfalfa, or recommend pre or post?
So we have a nutritionist that she actually likes chlorophyll or chlorella kind of better than alfalfa.
Oh, nice.
She says like they can do both, but either one or the other, she's like chlorella is probably more beneficial.
Does she like spirulina, or not as much?
Yeah, that's on her list as well. Yeah, she so we try to hit that like early on, where we check your hemoglobin at your new OB appointment, and then like at 28 weeks, because it will drop, because your blood just gets more hemodiluted as more pregnant you get. Got a lot of blood flowing through your body, so it just gets a little bit thinner, so that hemoglobin will drop half a point, maybe a point or so, and that's normal, but we just want to make sure it doesn't get too low. For us, we don't want them to be lower than 10, and we have them supplementing. If they're below 11.7, we have them supplementing, and we can do iron infusions and things like that, because that helps decrease your risk for postpartum hemorrhage. If you're not
Do you know
anemic.
if this mom had low hemoglobin, or would she surprise you?
I'm trying to remember.
And you see a lot of people, so
I don't remember if she had.
That's wrong.
Oh, but I do remember this. Okay, so after this, we're doing the things. We're like giving the meds. We're saving the life. We're doing the
Was
things.
she passing out?
I mean, she was a little pale, but she was doing fine.
Pale.
She was fine.
How many?
She was fine.
What baby was this for her?
This was her second baby.
Okay. Do you see it more in multiple or?
Yes. The more babies you have, your risk for hemorrhage goes up a little more just because that uterus, has expanded a few times. And it gets a little lazy after each baby, and it's kind of like, I don't want to clamp back down and do my job. So sometimes it gets a little lazy and you will have a higher risk for hemorrhage because of uterine tone, just because it's not clamping back down to its normal size. But
the cats are very distracting. My cat and her neighbor cat.
I feel like this chat has been everywhere. I feel like we've started a lot of topics and then we're like, swerve.
That's just how it goes. Okay. Well, anything else you want to say on the hemorrhaging? 'Cause then I have if you have any questions, put them in the chat. I have one final question, and then we got to go eat dinner. Our Chris and Jeff are, I almost said our husbands. We don't even know what they are. Fiancés, they're somewhere in the between. Yeah. Okay. They're letting us know dinner's ready. We have to go eat. We're both Gemini birthdays. Very close together, so that's why we're together. And I told her, it's like, when you come over, be prepared for anything. And so
I wasn't expecting this, but
you're doing great. And Grace also will in the future be offering doula services, pelvic floor help.
Who knows?
Lots of things. So just make sure you follow her and stay up to date with her.
Someday I'll have my own business.
But the thing that stuck out to me, what you said, you were like, if mom needs support. And so this could go for home, birth center, or hospital. You're like, and we just get her in the tub. Like, what does that do? Like, if you could just get in the tub while you're laboring. And can you get in the tub if your water's broke?
Yes. You can get in the tub when your water's broke. You can get in the tub if you're GBS positive. We don't care. And home birth midwives don't care either.
Is the hospital?
I am not sure about their protocols.
Yeah, I think you'd have to ask. I feel like if they won't let you in the tub, though, they'd let you in a hot shower.
Yes.
With
correct.
Have support in there.
Yes. Okay. What was the question?
The question was like when you talked about if the mom just needs support, she's having a hard time, we get her in the tub. Like, what does that do for a laboring mom?
So they call it the midwife's epidural. So significantly decreases pain. Kind of idea is numbing those like pain receptors a little bit, and I always say this word wrong. The buoyancy.
I like buoyancy
but
better.
I don't know why that word always comes out wrong. The buoyancy of of being in the water kind of takes the pressure off of of the baby on mom's pelvis, back, whatever, and just kind of makes it a little more comfortable. Especially moms who are having a lot of back labor. The tub is a good tool as well. I mean, the tub's a good tool anyway. It helps those tissues, kind of stretch and get a little more malleable as that head comes out. We love it. And it's just, I feel like it's natural, and it helps moms kind of go more internal and give them more of that relaxing space, and hopefully helps decrease tears and all those things. So I love the tub, and I love catching babies in the tub, and I even ended up in the tub a few times myself, which makes it fun.
I could see that. Okay, well, guide us, Grace. I know there's a lot of moms to be still with us, and before we go eat dinner, for those who are delivering in a day, a month, 3 months from now, like what confidence and what encouragement can you give them? That's broad.
Listen to your intuition. Listen to your body. Your body remembers, and I mean, you can do this. I mean, it's the most...
What does their body remember?
It remembers how to give birth. It remembers how its cyclic cycles. It remembers what it's supposed to do.
It knows what to move.
Yeah, so listen to that intuition, and listen to just, it's your experience, and that's what I love about it. It's such an energetic, it's kind of like an energetic ego death a little bit. I feel like you've got to get your ego out of the way during labor and birth, and it's kind of just this like spiritual, energetic thing that you go through. Yeah. And once you've like finally are comfortable with that, ego death and letting go and just like surrendering, it's a surrender process. And that's what I love to see. I love like seeing women just like reach that point of surrender and then just like opening fully and birthing this new life. And I love being that safeguard there in that special space for like this new little soul to come in. It's like, it's really beautiful to be there and just experience that happening time and time again. So,
and if you have questions, why my dog goes absolutely crazy over a squirrel, you can DM Grace. You can go to sorry to blow you up.
Yeah.
If you can Grace Gilroy, I follow her, you can find her. And then you can go to inspirehealthbyjen.com and check out the holistic pregnancy program that's running through July, and you'll have that intimate support and lots of these questions answered. So, crying chills when you said that. Thank you guys. This is fun. This feels good to give to women. So, all right. If you need anything, you know where to reach us, and we'll see you soon. Bye.